mystery, so welcome back to my channel. So in today's video, I'm going to finally be filming my October wrap-up. In terms of books, I had a really good reading month. I ended up reading 13 books, which is a lot more than the previous months. But unfortunately, in terms of ratings, it really wasn't all that great. So on that note, let's just jump straight into my stats for the month. So as for genres, I had 1 children's book, 5 fantasy books, 1 nonfiction, 2 thrillers, 1 mystery, and 3 horror novels. In terms of ratings, we had 1 1 star, 3 2 stars, 6 3 stars, and 3 4 stars, but 0 5 stars. So you know, mainly okay books and a couple of terrible ones, and then like a few saving graces, pretty much. So that comes to an average rating of no more than 2.85 stars for the whole month, which is atrocious. And compared with that, the Goodreads average of these books is 3.97. So there's a pretty huge gulf between how much I enjoy these books and how much the general population, I guess, enjoy these books. So the books came to 4,122 pages in total, which is a lot. And so on average, there were 317 pages per book, and I read 133 on average per day. In terms of settings, they were pretty varied. I had 6 books set in a fantasy setting, 2 in England, 1 in Spain, South Africa, and Japan, and then 2 in the US. In terms of gender, I had 6 male authors, 5 female, 1 non-binary, and 1 that had like 2 authors, 1 a woman and 1 a man, so split those up. 8 of the authors of these books were new to me and 5 were not. And then 4 books were what I consider pretty popular, and 9 actually are not as much talked about, so I'm pretty pleased with that ratio in general. As for release years, this month was actually pretty great on the 2018 releases. I ended up reading 5 2018 releases and 8 that were released between 2000 and 2017, so all pretty new in general. And that is it for the stats of this month. I hope you enjoyed it, and now let's jump right into my reviews. As always, I'm starting with the worst book that I read this month, and this month's was Hex by Thomas Alt-Huvelt. I talked about this already in my Spookathon wrap-up, so I won't go into detail here. Suffice it to say, this book was terrible, and I gave it 1 single star. I'm also going to refer you to that video for my next book, which is I Know You Know by Gillian Macmillan, another book that I read during the Spookathon and that I have already wrapped up, so there's no point in me talking about it again. By the way, as I've said, I am reviewing every single 2018 release in an individual video this year, but because I've already talked about this book so much in both my Spookathon wrap-up and the reading vlogs from that week, I decided not to film an extra video because I would just be repeating myself. So yeah, this is a 2018 release, but I don't have a dedicated review for it. You're just gonna have to watch the Spookathon wrap-up if you want to know my thoughts. The next book I've also already reviewed. That's kind of the theme for this video because I actually filmed a lot of reviews this month, and this is The Poppy War by r.f.kuang. I gave this 2 stars. Obviously, it was pretty terrible. I didn't enjoy it, and go watch my rant video for my extended thoughts on why it was really bad. And then my last 2 star I've also already reviewed. I mean, this is crazy. This is Unbury Carol by Josh Malerman, a 2018 release. I actually did a reading vlog and review in one, and it went up about last week or 2 weeks ago, I think. So if I still have space to link anything, I will link it in the cards. But if not, you'll find all the links of videos that I mentioned in the info box below. Okay, now we can finally get into some actual reviewing as I talk about my 3 stars. My very first 3-star read was actually one of the first books I read this month in general, and that was The Black Tides of Heaven by Ji Yang. This is a fantasy novella, and it's set in a world where people really grow up not having a gender pretty much. They grow up genderless, and as they grow into an adult and when they feel ready, they choose a gender, or they decide to like stay genderless, I guess. And that's kind of like the underlying thing, but it's also a fantasy world. It has magic in it, and that really sounded really intriguing to me, also because I wanted to know how this genderless world would function, like how that would work, if it was magic, if it was like just a biological thing for them. I just was really interested in that aspect. Unfortunately, while I did like the story overall and I thought the writing was really nice, first of all, there's literally no world building in this, almost. This is the reason why people write like 900-page fantasy novels, is because you need a lot of world building to make it work. You need to spend a lot of time on that, and that just, there was no time and no space for anything like that in this book, like this novella, and that felt like really just insufficient to me. Like I was not satisfied, I guess, by the small amount of world building that was done, and I wanted so much more. There's a lot of time jumps. You know, this is such a short story, and we follow these twins until like in their 30s, like from when they're born, and it's just, you just cannot do much with that. There's like so little wiggle room, I guess, and just couldn't grab and hold my attention at all. And then also, so the author's non-binary, and so I understand why they wanted to include this genderless society setup, I guess, in this book. I just felt like it also wasn't really developed as much as I would have liked. As I said, I was really interested in how that would work, and that was never really fully explained. If it was like this just like a biological thing in this fantasy world that they just like don't grow up having a gender, and then like they choose, like they when they're mature, they like can make a conscious decision what they want to become. Like, I don't know, there's so many options, I guess, like, but that never was explained. It was never really delved into, and I was kind of disappointed by that. So I didn't fully understand the point, I guess is what I'm trying to say, of like making this a genderless society when you're not actually going to talk about it all that much. I don't know, just my personal thoughts. And so for me, this book just kind of came to like being quite middle of the road and nothing too spectacular and just kind of forgettable, I guess. Then we have volume 88 of Detective Conan by Gosho Aoyama. I also gave this 3 stars. I thought that this volume was a little like far-fetched in terms of some of the cases and the solutions to those cases. Like, not trying to spoil you, but there's like one where the culprit like took a video of a video that was filmed 8 years ago and pretended it was a video that he'd filmed in like real life that afternoon. And like, you know, of the same, like that he'd filmed these people doing these things when they'd done these things on a video 8 years ago. Like, how on earth does this work? I mean, first of all, they're gonna have to be wearing different clothes. And second of all, most importantly, people don't look like they did 8 years ago. Like, no matter what age you are, I don't care if you're Japanese, you're still gonna look different in like a span of 8 years. Like, this is crazy to me. So, I don't know. I mean, I guess Detective Conan isn't a good manga in general to start like questioning things, but this was a little too much for me, and I just felt like it wasn't that well done, so I gave it 3 stars. Next, I read Behind Her Eyes by Sarah Pinborough. This is a thriller, and it follows like a love triangle, I guess, in a sense. So this follows a woman called Louise, and she is a secretary, I think, in a psychiatrist's practice. And then one night she goes out and meets like this really charming man, and they have like a one-night stand. And the next morning she goes to work and she finds out he's her new boss, David. And David is married to Adele, and also Adele and Louise kind of become friends without really knowing the full connection of like their situation, I guess. So this is the situation, and Louise, as time goes on, kind of through Adele finds out more about their marriage and David, and that there might be something weird going on there, and she's not sure because from David himself she gets very positive vibes, but through Adele she hears like all these horrible stories about him. So it's a messed up situation, and things go from there. There's a little bit of a supernatural element to this. It's not very pronounced for most of the book, but it's there, and I kind of liked it because it made it so that the book like clearly wasn't trying to be super believable and realistic, and I guess that took some of the pressure of it away, at least for me, because I typically, especially with like psychological or domestic thrillers, I'm very particular about it having to be believable, otherwise I don't care for it, and this book didn't even like try to do that, so I kind of appreciated it more for that. However, I did predict the ending, and I know that everybody says they can't predict it. I did, because I accidentally looked at the ending. Anytime I read a book, I check how many pages it has, just so that I know how much I'm gonna have to read. I don't know why, it's a thing I do. I always am very careful when I do that not to see anything on the actual page, but I accidentally saw whose perspective the last chapter was written from. So that gave me a little bit of a clue, and not too much, I think, but I still was able to predict the ending in its entirety, and I felt a little bit cheated because I went into this book thinking that it was gonna be so unpredictable, but I guess I cheated myself, so who can I blame but me? Anyway, I don't really know. I thought the book was fine, but also it's very stereotypical in its setup, like you know, domestic situation, the husband drinks too much, the wife is like frigid and cold. Like, I am so over it, so there were minus points for that. I don't know, I just didn't feel like it was as mind-blowing as many people say it is. I feel like I would still recommend it to people, I guess, if you're someone particularly who's pretty bad at predicting endings. I think you would be impressed by this and it might take you by surprise, but I felt like it was pretty clear that it was gonna go in that direction, even though the ending, again, it was a little gimmicky. The next book I've also already reviewed, so I'm just gonna quickly mention it, and that is Dance of Thieves by Mary Pearson. I actually gave this 3.5 stars, but I just, actually the last video I uploaded was my review for that, so check it out. And then, oh my god, this month I finally finished listening to the audiobook for Born a Crime by Trevor Noah. I'd honestly given up hope of me ever finishing this because I've been listening to this for the entire year. I'm not kidding. For at least 10 months, I've been listening, trying to listen to this audiobook, and it just like, I listened to it and like bursts kind of thing, but then I always lost interest and didn't continue, so I finally finished it now. And I thought it was funny. I really like the stories that he told. I think he's a really good storyteller. I actually don't really know anything of him outside of like listening to this book. But basically, if you didn't know, he's now a comedian, but he grew up in South Africa. He's half black and half white, and so he felt very alienated in South Africa. He didn't feel like he belonged to the colored people, which are the group of people that are like half black, half white. He felt more aligned, I guess, with his black ancestry, but that group didn't really see him as a full black person, so he's having a lot of like issues, like kind of trying to fit in. And it's also about just growing up in a pretty poor life, I guess, and struggling with an alcoholic and abusive stepdad and falling into petty crime and like things like that. And I thought it was really interesting and really well told. There's some really, really funny moments among all the hardships that he had to face, and I thought it was really interesting to see all that. I feel like it was a fun book, and I enjoyed it, especially listening to it on audiobook. I do recommend it because he narrates it himself, and that's pretty awesome. And finally, my last 3-star was Saga Volume 8 by Brian K. Vaughan and Fiona Staples. This volume I was kind of disappointed by. I usually give Saga volumes really high ratings, but for this I didn't really care for it. I felt like there were so much pandering, or like so much trying to be like cool and edgy with today's politics, talking about abortion and weird current events that like don't really make sense in the realm of this fantasy universe that doesn't exist. There's even a mention of like fidget spinners, and I'm like, oh my god, this is getting cringy. I'm sorry. I just felt like the book was trying to be like forcefully relevant to today's current events, when to me those politics don't really have a place in this universe because it's a made-up world. And if you were going to talk about today's actual politics, like I'm not just talking about like vague ideas, like if you're gonna specifically try to do like political commentary, maybe don't do it in a fantasy series that has nothing to do with our real world. Like, to me that doesn't compute fully, and I just don't understand. I'm finding it really frustrating, actually. I don't really know where the series is going at this point. I really hope that they get their shit together and hopefully end it soon, because I swear, these like graphic novel series can go on forever and ever and ever, trying to make as much money as possible. But at this point, I don't even really know what the end goal of the protagonist is anymore, and I'm just like over it a little bit. So I really hope that they're gonna find a conclusion soon and like just say this is it and it's done, and I'll be really happy when that happens. As for 4 stars, my first 4 stars is a little bit strange, and that is Gaudi Tolo Sampo by Pau Estrada, I believe. This is actually a book I picked up in a gift store at the Sagrada Familia in Barcelona, and they had these like picture books for children about Gaudi, and I saw this in Japanese and I decided to get it because I thought it was really cute and I could practice some Japanese. Because look at it, it's really, the art is really pretty, and it's a really lovely story of how Gaudi, which if you didn't know, Gaudi is the architect who made a lot of famous places in Barcelona, including the Sagrada Familia, and He actually died in a tram accident because he walked into a tram. And so in this book, they keep making allusions to him being like really absent-minded and like not watching the street. This page is like this, where Gowda is just like running, just not getting hit by trams, and like I'm finding it really funny. He doesn't die at the end of this book, it's just like a day in his life kind of thing. But I thought it was really cute and really funny, and I enjoyed it. It's not much, but there it is. It's kind of cute. Then I also reread one of my favorite books of last year, and that is Arabella of Mars by David Delavigne. This is a YA fantasy novel. So it's set in the mid-1800s, but in an alternate universe, kind of where England has colonized Mars. And we follow the main character of Arabella, who is from Mars, but she's actually British. And her mother forces her to move back with her to London, but she's really unhappy there, and when she finds out that her brother, who actually stayed behind on Mars, is in danger, she decides to run away, hitch a ride on an airship, and return to Mars to save him. And it's really, really well written. I've always said I feel like it's not really written like the typical YA novels. It's definitely, the language is more complex, the themes are more complex, and it's not as annoyingly romance focused as a lot of other YA fantasy novels, so those are all big plus points in my book. It has the trope that I really love, which is a girl pretending to be a boy as she does something like untoward for women at the time, so I really enjoyed that because she had to pretend to be a boy to get on this airship. There is some romance, but it's very subtle and subdued, and I really enjoyed it, and I am getting ready just now to read the sequel. I'm really excited. I hope I can do it this month because I love this book, and I'm hoping to enjoy the second one as well. And then the final book I read this month was Alice by Christina Henry. This is an Alice in Wonderland retelling, or at least like a story inspired by Alice in Wonderland, because it actually follows a completely different story. And again, I've also talked about this book in my Spookathon wrap-up that I've talked about throughout this entire video. So if you haven't seen that yet, you should, because I talk about this book. It's really good, and I really enjoyed it. And that is all of the books that I read in October. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know how your reading month went. I hope better than mine, because like, while I read a lot of bad books, and that's not fun, so yeah. So please don't forget to like this video and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. I upload videos every Tuesday and Friday like clockwork, and if you can't wait until then, check out some other videos I recently did over here. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you very soon, I hope. Until then, have a lovely week. Bye!